it's very, should be intuitive that you will appreciate how much a philosopher appreciates the sycophancy problem apropos LLMs. Now, I myself have puzzled about this because when last year when the LLMs started really acting up, and it's solely measurable because I was using the LLMs right when they were released, and I have several hundred chats, literally hundreds and hundreds of chats where there's just discussion about analytic points and so on. And at some point, if they started at 2022, it's already been several years. At some point, roughly, 14 months ago, they started cranking up the sycophancy in the model, right? And of course, nobody knows that that's what the phenomenon is, and nobody's naming it that way. And, so you've got a whole phenomenological diagnostic project on your hands just because some text on a screen, ersatz human text, starts sounding uncanny. So if you're a philosopher like me, you have to kind of drop everything and diagnose the problem and really get to the bottom of what it is. Otherwise, if we're talking about such a fundamental everyday part of everyday life, and we have, such basic questions about whether it's reliable, whether or not it's trustworthy, and so on, well, got to come to some conclusions about it. Got to get some results. So, and I guess that's what I did roughly, and I think we all probably ran our various degrees of experiments. I just have to run tons of experiments because I'm such a dumb shit, I guess. I'm slow. And I was, with people that I was in contact with. I'm still trying to get y'all's attention. You guys just don't like having conversations, I guess. Is that how it works? Like, you just don't like having long phone conversations. Certain people in my life have never been phone people, I guess. Like, I am a super phone person. I can just talk forever and ever and ever. I just got off a call right now. It's 3 hours long. That's just par for the course. See, there's no clock. This is one thing. This is one thing about the idea of operating beyond discourses or to the side of discourses or whatever, is that, look, I lose my train of thought. I'm losing my train of thought right now. I lost my train of thought just then. And if there's some kind of a crisis of getting back on track, fundamentally, first and foremost, a crisis of time. In other words, if I'm not a priori allowed to shift at any moment into a self-reflective subcategory of whatever moment that I'm in, simply in order to get a foothold, if for no other reason, then, you've disabled me as a thinker. I mean, I guess it's taken this long for me to even get clear on exactly what it is to lose your train of thought, what it is to speak within a discourse. Those two things, they work together. Losing your train of thought and speaking within a discourse. There's no such thing as losing your train of thought if you're not excluding possible discourse. Because, let's say you're a stand-up comic and you forget your line, right? You're standing there and you're sweating, right? You can't remember the joke. You can't remember any jokes. Well, I mean, if the discourse that you're in doesn't matter, I mean, if you weren't standing in front of an audience that just paid $20 to hear you tell them jokes, well, you could just do like Congress filibuster, just start reading names out of the phone book or off of a door flyer ad or something. So, if somehow the discourse has not been specified in advance, then nothing can count as good or bad discourse. But the discourse is never specified in advance. It's always implicit. And it's not actual either, because we are never in any particular discourse, right? We always only seem to assume always that we are. If you draw a university salary, then you speak like a university professor when you step onto campus. And when you step into what? The brothel? Then what do you act like? Well, maybe university professor, or but how's anybody act in a brothel? I don't know. There's apocryphalicity. Apocryphal, what is to be done? What is to be done? Who wrote that? What is to be done? It's not Bakunin. Bakunin's later, right? Well, Lenin made it famous, I guess. But if you read whatever it is that I've forgotten, whoever the original prior to Lenin is, then you will find prior to that, and there are regresses all over the place. So what indeed are we even talking about anyway? Dear friend, dear fellow American, dear interlocutor, what are we even talking about if every fucking thing is apocryphal anyway? You just have sounds that are coming out of your mouth. That's all it is. There's sounds coming out of your mouth and sounds coming out of my mouth. And you go out in the world and you hear a lot of human mouth sounds. And mostly it's non-human sounds, some non-human mouth sounds, and some human mouth sound. So, to the ear of a bird or a fish, don't know how good fish's hearing are. It's a land mammal. To the ears of a non-human land mammal, hey, all animals make animal sounds. They come out of animal mouth, and they make animal mouth sounds, and whether giraffe, lion, human, you may, if you're a prairie dog, because supposedly prairie dogs are very perceptive. Prairie dogs keep track of proper names. Proper names, they have proper names for all different individuals from different species and stuff in the area. And they have relay stations, the prairie dogs, so they can get They can get messages across very long distances in very similar ways to the way how it was done in antiquity. Like fire towers, smoke signals, shit like that. Prairie dogs do it with auditorial mouth noises. Prairie dog mouth noises, right? So every earth animal, every terrestrial vocal animal has vocal sounds, right? And you teach it, the physics lab at Stanford University, say. You have a PhD, you've got grants, Rhodes Scholar, shit like that. Proper. So there's representing Stanford Physics Lab, there's all kinds of things that you simply, not only can you not participate in, but there's certain views you're not even allowed to have. Views about the role of discourse, for example, or how about the limits of physics? How free is a physicist to expound their views and proffer their views within the physics community? Let's say, if they have views like mine and they want to make them known. Let's say Carlo Rovelli, all of a sudden, like some neurons in his head got busted and he woke up and he started talking like me, and he starts and he goes to the office and he starts telling everybody about his dick and like all kinds of too much information about people that he's fucking and so on. And then he starts but then he doesn't switch back into physics. But then it's almost like he starts using examples from theoretical physics and philosophy as examples of his sex life. So where is it that is determined, especially in this day and age when we have Donald Trump as our example? Holy shit. If you didn't think that you could literally do any fucking thing that you want, guess again. Now, pardon me, the thing that they're obscuring, Trump, the price. What's the price? All charlatans obscure the price. That's the check. What did this cost you, Donald Trump? What did this cost you in your terms? I want to hear about all the times you were raped as a child, or all the people that you raped, or, all of this stuff, right? And if he's not prepared to theorize all of that stuff and systematize it and say, yeah, this system of trauma represents the cost to me personally. And I can represent the cost to me for deciding to become the person that I've become. These are all the cost-benefit trade-offs, right? Here are the traumas, and I just go across, adequatio intellectus et re, Hume's principle, correspondence, one-to-one correspondence. Here's the central traumatic coordinates of my childhood. And here's the way that they led directly to my professional ontological commitments, right? No. Physics community does not allow it. The philosophy community apparently doesn't even allow it because, again, I will emphasize, I think I'm blackballed. Now, you will hear me say like that and you think, oh, Dimitri, we're going to give you tenure at IAS because you made 100 YouTube videos? No, I don't want tenure at IAS. No, I don't want to be a leader. And no, you're not paying close enough attention. Why would I want tenure at IAS? I bet they don't have tenure there. I mean, there's not departments, I don't think. Things are kind of open-ended. I don't know how it works. I mean, it's as a secret work group as any secret society. It has its rules and its mores and so on. And getting in, I suppose, has its coordinates. Getting in. What's getting in? Being allowed. I mean, look, even if let's say nobody wants to talk to you, but you're allowed to go anywhere in IAS anytime and learn. See, that's the difference probably in detecting LLM sycophancy, is that if you have a kind of bloodlust for glory or something, one thing that LLMs are very good at is they are psychoanalytic sponges. I mean, what happens is, you're basically just refracting and delaying in time and probably some kind of phase shift the same waveform as your own self. You're just overlapping it, you're superposing it onto yourself by some delayed fraction in time, and then looking at it, so, the oracle is speaking. But is it intelligent? No, there's no oracle there. There's nothing that's speaking. There is no speaking. That's the problem. You think because people are not getting this. LLMs do not feature language. They are not models of language. They do not feature language. They don't have human language. It's ersatz language, LLMs. It's strictly a cold, dead probability algorithm returning at the level of the character, the letter, each letter of each word, at the letter of each, and then that's cumulative. Everything is conditioned cumulatively and cumulatively for each previous result, so recursively, so each letter carries the baggage of the previous letter and makes composite knowledge. That's like Planck resolution for aggregate English language or whatever language, aggregate probability distributions of the language throughout the society. That's all it is. De-phenomenologize it, right? And just take up your standard, textbook Quinian externalist description. Have I described it? Does it satisfy? Yep, I think. If the externalist description satisfies, then probably you got kind of shitty phenomenology if you got any at all. So the externalist description is what? Is what? Human individuals storing a dictionary, aka human language, on a calculating machine. You store your language on the structural abstract of the language, the formal structure of it, and some data, examples, programs, a computer, right? And then you query the machine as though you're waiting for it to become more intelligent than you, as though it has some kind of sovereign geistige experience, Geistigkeit experience, phenomenological phenomeny experience. No. Formal abstract reasoning, yes. Procedural work, yes. All of that's calculable. But however it is that we construe phenomenological experience, living, breathing, appearing, and so on, there's a phenomenological background that is always presupposed that gets you the ego bindings. Where else do the ego binding? I mean, I shouldn't say ego bindings. That's wrong. That's a Freudian. No, I don't. I never liked the word ego anyway. Where do you get the variable bindings? They come from thought. Where else? Phenomenology. Dear Frege, phenomenology. That's where the variable. How are you going to put the judgments into the world? I mean, we know what a concept is. We know what a judgment is. But are there judgments? We've defined judgment. Are there judgments? Yes, there are judgments. How do they get there? That's not interesting. Frege doesn't think it's interesting. But he still says, yes, there's concepts, there's judgments, and what? What's the third? Assertoric force. Variable binding. What's assertoric force? Oh, like, that Nietzsche, Heidegger, Foucault. That's the gap right there. I've named it. That's where it is. That's where the leak is. It's right there. I've named it. I mean, there are others, I'm sure, but that's a pretty good one.